Thank you very much. We welcome once again the officials from the Department of Public Works and Highways, of course headed by our very hardworking Secretary Vince Dizon. Thank you very much for being here today. Members of the Committee on Appropriations, distinguished members, colleagues in public service, the officials from the Department of Public Works and Highways, esteemed guests, to our partners in the civil society organizations, and to the Filipino people watching today's hearings closely, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. The Committee on Appropriations convened on September 5, 2025 to deliberate the proposed budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways for fiscal year 2026. During the hearing, Representative Laila de Lima emphasized the constitutional duty of the House to review and pass the national budget, stressing the need for careful scrutiny and appropriate amendments. Upon her motion, the committee directed the Department of Budget and Management and the Department of Public Works and Highways to submit any corrections, revisions, or new proposals by September 12, 2025 to allow members sufficient time for review before the next hearing of the Department of Public Works and Highways. Consequently, the committee also approved Honorable De Lima's motion to defer the consideration of the Department of Public Works and Highways budget for fiscal year 2026 to a later date, but not beyond September 16, 2025, to accommodate this process of rectifying or rather overhauling the DPWH budget for fiscal year 2026. Subsequently, on September 10, 2025, the committee received a letter from DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon, dated September 9, 2025, formally requesting an extension of the submission deadline from September 12, 2025 to September 15, 2025. A motion was made and duly approved by the committee on September 10, 2025, to grant the extension in consideration of the department's request. The committee confirms the receipt of the revised budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways that was submitted by the DPWH on September 15, 2025. Today, in faithful exercise of its constitutional mandate to guard the power of the purse, the committee again convenes to consider and deliberate on the revised submission of the DPWH. Members of the committee are hereby invited to evaluate and provide their comments on the said submission, copies of which were formally distributed to all members of the committee and to all House members on September 16, 2025. This proceeding affirms our duty to ensure that every peso appropriated is justified, transparent, and aligned with the priorities of the fiscal year 2026 national budget. Maraming salamat po, and before I yield the floor to Secretary Vince Dizon to present the revised budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways for fiscal year 2026, I would first like to recognize the Vice Chairpersons of the Committee on Appropriations who will be sponsoring the budget of DPWH. Representative Romeo Momo, Senior, Chairperson of the Committee on Public Works, and Vice Chairperson Ron Singson. I would first like to recognize Vice Chair Ronald Singson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, good morning to all the members of the DPWH family, as well as the members of the House of Representatives. Before we proceed with the hearing, I would just like to raise two matters or two reminders for this hearing. First is that there's new information for all of us, and as the Secretary has conveyed to me this morning, there are so many changes that have happened ever since the time na nag-suspend tayo ng session to terminate the session to revise the budget. And then apparently there are again recent changes. So I ask the members Kung meron bang kayong, I'm sure nakakuha nyo na yung bago nyong NEP, and I'm sure you have so many questions as to the changes that has happened. Unfortunately, as the secretary said, these changes were very recent, and he just found out yet a few days ago. So I would like to remind our members to please try to keep your questions on policies and procedures. And if you do have any parochial concerns with regards to your NEP, kung magkano yung nabawas, bakit ganito or bakit ganyan, the respective regional directors of the DPWH are very ready and willing to help and discuss these matters. We have a holding area under North Wing Lounge where you can approach them and discuss these matters. Kasi I'm sure pag tinanong nyo kay Secretary Vince, sasabihin nyo lang, okay, I'll look into it, and then, of course, with the guarantee that he will be helping us. But I don't think he will have specific answers as of the moment. So yun lang po. And then, secondly, the chair would like to announce that we will be suspending this hearing at 2:45 this afternoon. And then we will resume shortly after, because all the members are requested to be at the plenary by 3 p.m. for a very historic event. So I cannot expound on that anymore, but that is what will be transpiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Singson. Before I give the floor to Secretary Vince Dizon to deliver the presentation of the DPWH, siguro I just want to give the recognition that the good men and women of the DPWH deserve. Just for them to be able to make the deadline of September 15, 2025, hindi po talaga sila natulog. And I can attest to that. Like Sec Vince would be in communication with all of us up until the wee hours of the morning, paminsan 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, just to appraise us of what's already going on, na we're working on it, these are what we've spotted, and these are the things that we need to fix. So, siguro po, I would just like to give due recognition to our good officials in DPWH for working so hard just to make this happen. Again, over 700 pages po yung naunang budget proposal ng DPWH. Ngayon po, their revised submission, I think, is around 661, 663 pages. So they had to go through thousands and thousands of line items to be able to revisit it and overhaul the budget of the DPWH. So kung meron lang pong mga clerical errors, halimbawa po with regard to stationing or my typographical errors, let's please help point it out to the DPWH just so we can also help them fix it. Siguro, pagod na din po if ever there are those errors that are there. But of course, if substantive talaga yung errors and the issues and all of that, please also point it out for the consideration of the committee. But again, thank you very much, Sec Vince, for all of the hard work. Hindi kayo natulog ng 2 linggo just to make this happen. So thank you, Sec Vince. And with that, I yield the floor to Secretary Vince Dizon to deliver the presentation on the revised budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways.
Madam Chair, Mika Suansing, maraming salamat po. We are very happy to hear the words that you just spoke today, especially those that thank the hard work that the men and women of DPWH have tried to do to meet this deadline and come up with this unprecedented and quite historic budget resubmission. I think I cannot take any credit for this, ma'am, because it's really the men and women who know this, who know the department very well, who have been there for so long, that really worked very hard, tirelessly over the last couple of days, less than 10 days, na talaga pong pinagtrabahuan ito. But we also would like to thank the entire House of Representatives led by, of course, the Speaker, as well as our Honorable Chair and the entire membership of the Committee on Appropriations for giving us the opportunity and giving us the directive, together with the President's directive, to revisit and resubmit a budget that, using the words of the President, will ensure that every peso of the people's money will be spent well. And I think that is really the end goal of everyone here today. Based on what the President has repeatedly said, that he wants every peso of the national budget spent for the people. I think what we have done here is really a clear manifestation of that desire of the President. So with that po, honorable members of the Committee on Appropriations, I would like to present the budget for DPWH for fiscal year 2026. I think there is a short presentation. So, let me just say before I go into the details of the budget, that as Chair Mika so clearly spoke about before we were given this opportunity to present, this was not an easy task. This is in fact unprecedented. I don't think this has ever happened before. And we were really working with very limited time. But given the limited time and all the efforts that have been exerted throughout the past couple of days, I think we do have a budget that we can be proud of. It is by no means perfect. There will be some problems still in this budget, but we have tried our best to really address a lot of the issues, not only those issues that have been raised by the President himself, but also by some members of the House of Representatives. So with that po, let me first say that the resubmitted budget of the DPWH, next slide please, is close to 30%, to be exact, 28.9% lower than the originally submitted 881 billion peso budget. It is now 625.7 billion. That is 255 billion approximately lower than the originally proposed budget. This 30% increase has never happened in the past. And I have been informed that this is the lowest budget of the DPWH since 2020. No? Since 2020 po. The 2021 budget of DPWH was already at 770 billion. So this is lower than 2021 and is only higher than the 581.6 billion budget in 2020. So I think that by itself shows the seriousness of the President, no, to really start changing the way things are done at DPWH, beginning with the submission of the national budget to Congress. So let me now proceed to where the 255.5 billion cut came from. And as we all know, next slide please, this came from the a huge chunk of this, almost the entirety of the cut came from the 252.5 billion originally allocated for locally funded flood control projects. As everyone is already aware, the President has repeatedly said that he wants the budget for locally funded flood control to be zero for 2026. Ang sabi po ng ating Pangulo, meron na naman tayong ginagawa,